Hello everyone, this is Herbs back with another video, and today I'm going to be showing you how I beat Minecraft from start to finish without ever pressing WASD in a random seed world with absolutely no glitches or hacks. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Okay, just a quick side note that I'd like to mention is I am aware, before you guys start commenting down in the comment section, that this has been done before. A YouTuber by the name of The Height Advantage released a video about this on September the 15th of this year, called How to Beat Minecraft Without Walking. And the truth is, I started making my video before he uploaded his. In fact, on the screen right now, you'll be seeing a clip where I show the exact date when I started making the third attempt at this video. So the third attempt at this video I did well before his video came out. However, when I was at the point of killing the Enderdragon, so I was very far into my run, it popped up into my recommended, and I saw that this other guy had already done my video. He had the exact same idea, he did it in a very similar way, and he'd unfortunately uploaded it just a few weeks before I ended up getting around to it. Now, this did make me rather depressed, because I was rather sad. That video now has almost 7 million views. That YouTuber has gained 20,000 subscribers as a result when he was at almost 0 before then. And I was kind of depressed, so I kind of quit this video for a really long time. That's why it's been 2 weeks since then, and I never uploaded this video. But in the end, I decided, I put so much effort, I put dozens of hours into beating Minecraft without moving. I thought I'd just share my way of beating it anyway, even if someone else has already done it before me. Alright, cool. So my very first attempt to beat Minecraft without moving, I did get relatively lucky. So I created my world in regular survival mode, absolutely nothing weird going on there. And I just logged in, and when I loaded in, I had gotten very lucky for my first try. I was right next to a tree, which is one of the parameters that I needed, because I need to get wood immediately, and I was very close to water, which I thought would be good enough, because I thought maybe I'd find a way to be able to use my bucket to reach the water. However, as you'll see in the next couple clips, I didn't quite get to the point where I was able to obtain that water. But as you can see, as we load in right here, I load right next to a tree, right next to water. It's looking good. So basically what I end up doing is I mine the tree directly next to me, and I get all the wood that I can possibly get from my spawn position, so without actually moving up or down. Then I make a crafting table, and I make a wooden pickaxe, and I start mining straight down until I have enough stone to make a stone pickaxe. And I keep mining straight down, and I pray that I actually run into some iron down there, and with this seed I actually do. I find some iron down below, and I get very, very lucky. I find some iron. So I collect up all that iron, and I craft myself a furnace, and then I smelt that iron, and I use it to make my very first item that I need to move, which is a bucket. Now, buckets can be used to move because you can place down water next to you and they'll push you along. In this way, I don't actually have to ever press the arrow keys. So that was my first method of moving. So as you can see here, I collect my iron, then I smelt it up, and I go back up to the surface. Now that I have a bucket, the question is, how do I get to the water? For a really long time, I tried jumping on stairs, thinking I could kind of go down using gravity, but it doesn't work that way. In the end, I kind of gave up on this. I decided to throw my bucket closer to the water where I know I'd be able to reach it. And then using a flint and steel from a piece of flint that I found while I was mining straight down, I would burn myself to death so I could actually kill myself conveniently, and then hope that I spawn near that bucket, near enough that I can pick it up. Now, this was very unlikely, but in theory, it would be possible if I died and respawned right next to the bucket. I could recollect it without moving, and then collect water if I spawned closer to the river. However, as it turned out, I actually spawned in a completely random spot where I couldn't even see my bucket, let alone grab it, so that was a failure. My second attempt to make a world where I could beat Minecraft without moving failed even worse because I wasn't even next to a tree, so I gave up on that pretty quickly. But my third attempt was the most successful of all, and that was the one that I ended up actually beating Minecraft with. So as you can see on the screen, immediately I spawned next to a tree, which is obviously something that I really wanted, and I'm relatively close to water again, so I'm feeling pretty good about this one. However, I am on what seems to be a very small island, and at first I thought this would be a really bad thing. I thought it would mean it would be impossible to escape the island and get to desert temples or villages, which are necessary for this run. But as it turns out, this actually turned out to be a blessing, and that I never realized was a good thing, but it actually was really helpful. And I'll delve into why it was so helpful a little bit later on in the video, but as you can see, I mined straight down and I got very lucky again. There was iron deposits directly beneath me, and I mined them all out, and there was enough there to get a bucket. So I mined all the iron, smelted it in a furnace from the cobblestone I got while mining straight down, crafted myself a bucket, and then dug myself back up to the top of the surface. Now, while I got here, I made a column up to the sky, and I got super lucky. During the nighttime, a zombie spawned right near me, and I knew this was exactly what I needed to get to the water. So I waited till the zombie was on the opposite side of the water from me, so that it would knock me toward the water. Then when it knocked me closer, I grabbed some water bucket, and then I desperately fought for dear life so that I wouldn't die and lose this beautiful progress I'd gotten so far. After a lot of effort, I managed to wall myself off from the zombie and then push myself into a hole and burrow up for the night. Then when daytime came round, I simply used my water bucket to move around and collected the rotten flesh that the zombie had dropped in order to get my hunger a little bit higher. Now, something worth noting is that for most of the rest of the video, I won't actually show myself moving around because it was extremely slow, extremely boring, extremely strenuous task, and not something that you'd really want to watch. Is extremely tedious and slow moving, as you can imagine. So right now in the background, I have a severely sped up version of me moving around my island at the very beginning of this run, and it's included in here so you can get a little bit of a sense of what it was like for the vast majority of my run before I obtained for myself a pig with a saddle that I could ride on and a carrot on a stick. So for like the first probably third of the time I spent in game, maybe even half, probably closer to half actually, I had to move around only using a water bucket to propel myself around. So as you can see in the background, it's a very long and boring task. I just thought I'd show this to give you a sense of essentially what it was like for me, because obviously I'm not going to be showing those bits in the actual video because they're extremely slow and boring. That being said, I was fairly successful in my endeavor to mine all the trees on the island. I dug little holes. I figured out slowly but surely the best methods to climb up a block if I need to get it a block higher to maybe go over a hill or something. I figured out the best ways to move efficiently, finding out that you could dig a hole in the ground and the water would always divert toward it, which made movement a lot quicker and more controllable. And overall, I kind of got used to this style of moving pretty quickly. It was still extremely annoying for the entirety of the time I had to do it. However, I did get significantly better at it. And that's about the gist of it. So the next clip I'm going to show is what the island looked like once I had cleared all the trees, made myself a little underground shelter, and was able to get enough dirt to make an upward column to take a better look at my island. Alrighty then, so this is the very first tour you'll be getting of my island. There will be a bunch of these over the course of the video to show the progression of my island. As you can see, it's fairly small. There was a decent amount of trees on it considering, and I quite like the animals that are there. There are a lot of animals that I really wanted early game, but nothing very impressive. Now here's the second update. As you can see, with considerable effort, I made my very first farm. Now this is quite cleverly made. It may seem like an inefficient way of farming, but if I made the farm on ground level, I would have broken all the seeds every single second with my water bucket. So I made it a block higher so that I could move around it without knocking the seeds out of the ground with my water bucket. Now, eventually those seeds grew into wheat, and I got my very first harvest, which I used to make bread. And finally, after all this time, I was able to no longer be at 1.5 hearts. This has been stressing me out for a very long time, so as you can imagine, I was so happy to get to a point where I was actually able to eat, even if only for a short while. So here is the next update. As you can see, I've finished my farm, or at least this is the farm that I used for the rest of the run. I made a passageway up the middle so I could actually go up and down and collect the crops that I break without actually destroying any of the crops. And as you can see, there are 2 water streams through which my plants would get irrigated and not dry up in the sun. This was a very efficient method of farming. It wasn't as big as I would have liked, but honestly, it was big enough. By the time I finished harvesting one side of the farm, the other side of the farm would have finished growing, and I had to do that too, kind of like the parable with the guy painting the boat. So yeah, I spent a really long time at this farm. And the other thing that I spent a lot of time doing on my time at the island was mining, and actually conveniently directly under my island was an abandoned mine shaft, and I looted the entire thing over the course of about an hour, and I got some diamonds, but overall it really wasn't that helpful for me. I mean, I got some iron, some diamonds, but really what helped was collecting any iron that I saw along the way. And also I did some strip mining later. I did a couple hours worth of strip mining, and I got myself a fairly sufficient amount of different materials. However, I have about 2.5 to 3 hours of footage of me just mining, strip mining. It's extremely boring, And I've already edited a video like that before, where I literally had to go through hours and hours of footage of me just mining, and I really don't feel like doing that again because it's very boring. So what I thought I'd do is I just show the highlights from when I loot the mine shaft and not show any of the highlights from when I was doing the strip mining, and I apologize for that. However, I will show a clip that shows all the results of my grand mining expedition. However, I will, of course, show the very first time I found diamonds, because I totally freaked out, and how could I possibly not include that? So as you can see, I was strip mining, and I came across a lava-filled cave area, and I found my first diamonds, and that was very exciting. And I got very lucky actually with this ore. In other veins I found there's only 1 or 2 diamonds. I was getting really unlucky. However, in this one there was there 5 or even 6? There was a lot of diamonds in this vein. There was 5, yeah. So I was very happy with that. Now when I got back up to my cave, as you can see, I have a heck ton of iron, but I also have a decent amount of diamonds. I have almost enough to make a full set of diamond armor, but in the end I decided just to make half a set so I could conserve some diamonds for anything I might need later. So the 2 things I consider less important, the helmet and the leggings, I made out of all my extra iron, and then I made myself a nice little diamond chest plate and diamond boots. I then put on these armor pieces, and I have to admit, I felt like I was pretty amazing. I felt pretty good. It felt pretty awesome to have made such nice armor, and this was the point when I decided I was basically ready to go ahead and leave my island. I had almost 2 stacks of hay bales, I had very nice armor, and all that was left to do was, unfortunately, I had to go ahead and I had to kill all the cows that I had been breeding, because I needed food for the rest of the run. So the very first thing I did was I released all of my cows from their enclosure, and I basically just killed them all. So I didn't have any fancy sword to like cook them or anything like that, so I just killed them the good old-fashioned way using my diamond sword. This took a decent amount of time, and I let the babies free as much as possible because I'm not a terrible human being. Then I simply cooked up all this meat, and I was basically ready to leave the island. However, there was one last thing that I just couldn't help but do, and that was to tame the 2 or 3 wolves that I found on my island. And once I did that, I had a nice little breeding population that I bred over the course of the run, so I'd have an entire doggy army. And now it was time to leave my island. Here's a quick clip showing how it looked when I left. As you can see, it's pretty different. I've made a bunch of changes and augmentations as I moved around the island, and also the baby cows that I let free have grown into adults, but that's basically it. And so I mined straight down, and then I mined out away from the island to the mainland. As you can see, I made a really long tunnel. It took me an extremely long time, but I did get a decent amount of cobblestone from doing this. And I made my way all the way over to here, and I'm just going to show me climbing up this hole a second time to get to the mainland. Now, once I got to the top, I descended down the mountain using a nice little waterfall, as you can see on the screen right now, and straight away I noticed a couple of things. One is that I appeared to be on another island, although as I later found out I was not. But the second thing was that there was a lava pit right there, and I immediately knew I was going to use it to go to the nether. But before I could do that, I had to establish a spawn. So I attracted the first few sheep I saw, and I sheared their wool, so that I could make myself a bed and respawn easily. I then went to a very nearby desert that I saw. I turned up my distance chunks, and I saw that there was a desert temple, so I made my way over there, because I knew that the very next thing I needed to do before I could go to the nether was to obtain a saddle with which I could ride a pig. And a sand temple, or rather a desert temple, is a very good place to find a saddle. So I very carefully made my way into the temple, mined the pressure plate so I wouldn't get exploded, and I looted all 4 chests, and just to my delight, one of those chests, in fact 2 of those chests, contained saddles, and I obtained 2 saddles that I would use over the course of the run. And I was actually very lucky that there was 2. I wasn't thinking of getting 2, but as it turned out, they were very necessary, because later on, when I made the nether portal, as you can see, I actually would lose a pig in the nether and have to respawn and use a different pig to return to the nether. Now, as you can see here, I got my very first pig with a carrot on a stick, and I rode it back to my nether portal. Now, once I returned to my nether portal, all I had to do, I thought, was light it, and I could head on in with my pig and go find some blazes to kill, because I needed blaze rods to kill the Enderdragon. However, it was easier said than done. Much time later, I finally managed to get my pig through the thing. However, I did notice soon after I went through the portal that lava came down and surrounded my portal, so that was extremely scary and dangerous. However, I got pretty lucky, and I'd already made my way away from the portal before the lava arrived. That was something I'd deal with when I left the nether. Now, all that was left was to find some blazes, because of course, course, I needed to get blaze rods by killing blazes in order to make Eyes of Ender. And I needed to make Eyes of Ender in order to reach the end dimension at the end of the game in order to kill the Enderdragon. I got very lucky actually with the spawn. Right where I made my nether portal, there was a fortress. However, it was pretty far away from the nearest blaze spawning area. So I spent a significant amount of time wandering around the fortress on my pig, and this is by far the scariest part of the run because A, the nether is extremely dangerous and scary, and B, a pig is one of the least convenient and least controllable ways of moving in the game. The pig will instantly move in whatever direction you're facing whenever you're holding a carrot on a stick. This is genius because it means that you don't have to use W, A, S, or D to move. Whereas if you wanted to ride a horse or a boat or something like that, you'd have to press the arrow keys. With a pig, you can just face the direction you want to go and hold a carrot on a stick, and then you can move. And in this way, I can get around the nether without pressing W, A, S, or D. However, it is extremely, extremely scary and precise as a result of the way the pig works. So, yeah, here's a sped up version of me walking around the nether fortress until I eventually find myself a nice little spot to start farming those blazes. Now, if I thought that moving around the nether while riding on a pig and controlling it with a carrot on a stick was difficult, I had another thing coming, because the next part was even more difficult. This is probably the hardest part of the run. Or one of the hardest parts. In this part, I basically had to go ahead and kill as many blazes as I could in an effort to get a ton of blaze rods. Now, as you can see, I did succeed in doing this. However, it was very difficult. The way I ended up doing it is I found a blaze spawner, and I would wait for a blaze to spawn, trap it as you can see on the screen right now, and then I would slowly but surely kill it. After getting myself into a good position to attack it from, then I would go ahead and collect the blaze rod that it drops. And in this way, I was able to obtain a decent number of blaze rods. I think I got 5 or 6 in the end. However, after doing all this, I actually, my pig died, and so I had to deliberately put myself inside of chest and then deliberately let myself die in the lava down below. And as you can see right now on the screen, I then had to get my other saddle to ride my pig through the nether again and recollect my items. However, in the end, I had to do this a couple times, but it really wasn't anything super devastating. It really didn't mess up my run as a whole, as I didn't actually lose any items except for the occasional iron pickaxe. But then once I collected all my stuff, I went back out the nether, and I started to go on the next part of my journey, which was to find my way to the final dimension, the end. But one last thing I had to do just before I could actually get to the end is I had to obtain some ender pearls, and the way I planned to do this was to trade with villagers for them. That's why I farmed so much wheat on my island at the very beginning. So I collected up my entire doggo army, grabbed myself a couple pigs, got my very best items so I only had what I absolutely needed, and set off along the grassland. And after a decently long amount of time, but not that bad actually, I stumbled across a village in the savanna biome. Now, as soon as I got here, I instantly went ahead and I looted all the chests. However, I did get some decent materials from them, and then I went ahead, a cleric in the village, and I was quite easily able to get a couple villagers by placing down composters all over the place. So I made myself a bunch of wheat out of my hay bales, and from hay bales that I looted from that village, and just started converting them into emeralds, one by one by one by one. I spent probably, all in all, about 1 hour in the real world in this village, which is significantly less time than I was expecting to have to take. And in the end, I got everything I needed. So I traded all my wheat in for emeralds, and then I traded my emeralds in for enough ender pearls that I was confident I would never run out of any. Then I simply turned my blaze rods into blaze powder, and then I made myself some eyes of ender so I could find the stronghold. I threw my first eye of ender, and I followed the path it went on my pig, and thus began my journey to the end. Now, I don't know if I had just been getting very lucky with my spawn, or if I happened to go in the right direction all this time, but actually the stronghold was really not that far away from where I was at this point. It was about 1,000 blocks away. So I simply went in the direction of the Eye of Ender. I went about 500 blocks at a time, and after a certain point I realized that the Eyes of Ender were going in different directions, and that's when I realized I was probably around above the stronghold. So I mined straight down, and one of my puppies came along with me, it seems, and eventually I found some stone bricks, a sure sign I'd finally found the stronghold, the final part of the game. So I went to the stronghold, and the first thing I went ahead and did was what basically everyone does when they first get to a stronghold, and that is that I started looting it. Now, interestingly, one of the first things and best things that I found was actually a diamond. The actual loot in the chests in the stronghold weren't as good. In fact, all I ended up getting was an iron helmet. Even the library had nothing good. And the library, I'll tell you, was a death trap. With all those cobwebs in that water, it was very difficult to get out. But in the end I did, and very nearby, I quite easily found the end portal. So all I had to do was break the silverfish spawner, and then I could put my Eyes of Ender into the portal, go into the end, and kill the Enderdragon. Except it wasn't quite that easy. I put in my Eyes of Ender into the portal, and unfortunately I was too short, which meant one thing. I had to go ahead and go into the nether once again. Now, this was pretty uneventful. I essentially went in, I found 2 blazes fairly easily, and I killed both blazes. I got very lucky. My pig was actually on half a heart when I killed the second one, but I did get pretty lucky in that the blazes both dropped their blaze rods, and now I had enough blaze rods in order to finish up that end portal. So I made my last 2 Eyes of Ender, and I put them into the portal, and boom, I was ready to enter the end. Now, the end was a bit of a disaster, I have to admit. This is actually my first time ever fighting the Enderdragon in Java Edition in survival, so admittedly it went very wrong. Luckily, I made a world save. I actually did file work to save the file onto one of those file saver websites, and I was able to retry it multiple times, because if I wasn't able to do that, I certainly would have lost all my progress, and it would have all been for nothing. But in the end, I was successful. I took out each of the ender crystals one by one, which actually wasn't all that difficult, although I did die multiple times along the way. The difficult part in the end was killing the actual Enderdragon itself. Now, the Enderdragon, I had heard, the main problem was it knocked you really high into the sky, and then you had to place a water bucket immediately if you wanted to have any chance of surviving the really long drop. As you can see right there was the dragon's breath. So the dragon would shoot splash damage missiles at me, which would take away my health over time. Really deadly for me because I couldn't run away from the projectiles very easily, and even when the projectiles did hit, I couldn't get out of the purple cloud that would kill me slowly hit by hit. I tried using all the beds that I'd farmed all the wolves for earlier, and honestly I wasn't very good at it. I'd seen speedrunners doing it, so I thought it was a good idea, but for me it didn't work. However, in the end, I finally did prevail. Unfortunately, I wasn't recording when I fought it, because, you know, I'd spent hours and I'd eventually given up recording every last second of it. But I did press record once I realized I'd actually succeeded. And as you can see, I killed the Enderdragon and thus ended my run. So yeah, that's a pretty in-depth look into the way in which I beat Minecraft without moving, using WASD once, from start to finish, random seed, and no glitches whatsoever. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's kind of a lengthy one, but I hope I was able to make it pretty interesting for you guys. You have to realize this is dozens of hours of gameplay, and then probably about 10 or 12 hours worth of editing afterwards. So I really did put a ton of effort into this video, and if you've watched this far, I'm assuming you enjoyed it, and if you did, it would mean a real lot to me if you would subscribe. Right now, I'm at only 120 subscribers, and that's a really small amount. The other guy who made an exact same video, except significantly less interesting in my opinion because it had no narration, got 10,000 subscribers, in fact 20,000 subscribers for making that video. So I really appreciate it if I could get a little bit of love too for a small channel like mine. But yeah, all in all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have any comments you'd like to make or any advice for the future or anything you'd just like to say in general, just be sure to comment it down in the comments down below. But this has been Herbs with yet another video on the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm out. Thank you.